What's up guys and welcome to Wicked Pixels. This is our next build guide, this time for the Regent character. So the Regent is probably the most difficult character in Slay the Spire 2 to master. It's just had a bit of an update in one of the latest patches, so we're taking him out for a spin and we did manage to come up with a decent looking build that uses artillery strike. So let's have a little look at some of the features of this. We'll come back together, we'll have a look at some of the cards and we'll talk you through the build, and hopefully this will help you to make your own Regent build and hopefully find a little bit more success slaying the Spire. Alright. Okay, so here we are on the final screen of the run. This one was using the card Bombardment. I called it Artillery Bombardment, it just seemed very fitting. But this one is a free cost, so it's quite difficult to get into your into play. So why is this good? So the reason why it's good is it does a chunky amount of damage, not crazy for free energy, but at the start of your turn, once it's in play, it's just going to keep playing over and over and over again. So this is value in a bomb. Essentially, we've got to get it on the board first, and that's the difficult part of this. So we're looking to have some sort of a run where we're going to have lots of energy, or develop lots of energy enough to play Bombardment and get it into play as a priority, and then we're going to spend most of the rest of the time trying to defend ourselves. That's the whole point of this deck. So in order to do that, then we've got a number of different elements that kind of all slot together. So Bombardment obviously being very important, but we also need some more damage to pile onto there. So we did find Gamma Blast, which is a really good star-based cost, and you'll see in a second why we went for the star resource as one of our main areas to damage or block. And this does a solid amount of damage. This is purely going to use your star power, and it's going to also apply 2 weak and 2 vulnerable. So really solid attack there. Alright, it costs 0, yes it does cost 3 star, but we've got ways of generating stars very quickly once you get your engine running, and that's going to be a chunky amount of damage, but also add those crucial weaks and vulnerables for that artillery bombardment, sorry I keep calling it artillery bombardment, for the bombardment to come in at the start of every turn. So really powerful attack, one that I would definitely recommend you keep an eye out for. We did have a couple of strikes in there, one of them got upgraded just through a random event I think. We did get a normal defend, but we managed to get a replay 1, which ends up making this card incredible. So it's 16 block, so I upgraded it just to make sure it was getting the best value there. It plays it twice, so 8 times 2, 16. Really solid 1 drop there. And then we also had this fall in, which I can't tell you to look for this card because it's just a complete random, and it comes from one of the events at the start of each one of the floors. It's incredible. It's really strong card that you're going to want to play as soon as it turns up in your hand. The reason being, it only costs 1 to play but also 3 stars, but don't worry about that because every time you play a card after that you're just going to keep generating stars. Effectively this makes your star resource just really easy to generate, and that means we can lean into some really strong cards that leverage using stars instead of energy, and then we can also generate more energy from having lots of stars as well. So really powerful card, not one I'm going to say look for, but if you do get this, usually take it on a Regent. We've also got Cloak of Stars, which is because we're generating so much star power we needed a defense as a priority. This is a really easy, cheap defensive card. So I did upgrade this. It starts at 7 block and upgrades to 10. It's only 1 star, not even energy. I feel like stars are much easier to generate than energy. So think about your stars as being a cheaper resource, and if it's only cost 1 of those, this is an insane amount of block for a single resource point. Definitely pick that one up. We've also got this one, so alignment. Because we're generating so many stars from the Sealed Throne, this just became a really easy way to then leverage that as extra energy. So this made sure that we had enough energy to pop Bombardment if we had this in our hand, or just play out enough of our other skills to keep ourselves blocked and healthy. So really solid card, probably pick in most builds. In fact, for a Regent as a baseline, I would always aim to try and address the resources. So look for something that's going to generate you lots of stars, and then look for this card that's going to help you convert stars into energy. So you've got a good way to kind of flip between the two. We then also got lucky and picked up a Secret Technique. This is another really strong card. I will put this in almost any build. It's not one that you need just for this build, but always a really good card to have. It just means that you can do some card selection to find that thing that you really need for that particular turn. So Charge ended up being a really good card that comboed up really nicely with our Bombardment. So Charge and Bombardment together, you've played your Bombardment, you're going to be getting that 24 damage at the end of every turn, and then just to add some extra nice cheap damage on top, we hit Charge. Now Charge serves a dual purpose here. First of all, it's going to help you transform cards that you've got in your hand or your deck into basically attack cards. So we can quite easily get rid of curses, status cards, and rubbish strike and defense that we don't need or want. So instead of keeping those, this is going to streamline our deck on the fly, and it's also going to add these lovely 0 cost minion dive bombs, which do 16 damage when upgraded. So that's nothing to be sniffed at all for 0 cost. The one thing you got to look out for with charge is make sure that you're not eating too quickly into decks. If the fight goes on too long, then this could potentially become a bit of a problem, because you're not going to have enough of your sort of cards that you don't really care about to dig into to get the minion dive bombs created. It is, generally speaking, because we've got the bombard running, it is going to be a case that you are doing consistent damage, and it shouldn't take too long to win the fights. So this, for me, a really good strong card, synergizes really well with the build that we've got, and I could see this working effectively in a lot of other builds as well, just because of the utility it provides. On top of that one, we also had Orbit. So this was one that we picked up earlier in the run when we were struggling to make enough energy to get the bombard off. So Orbit is really decent because it can upgrade to a 1 cost, and once you've upgraded it, then you're going to get some returns. It's not the most, if you compare it to something like the Ironclad, who's got Pyre, it's not nearly as useful as the Pyre, but it is just a little bit of extra energy. So every time you're spending 4 energy, you're going to gain 1 extra, which is quite useful because it means most turns you're effectively going to have 1 extra energy to use. So I would always recommend you pick up one of these and upgrade it straight away. Then we got this little interesting card called Make It So, which is a 0 cost damage card, deal 9 damage, and every 3 skills you play in a turn, you're going to put this back in your hand. Because we are relying on quite a few skills, so we're playing out our attacks. We've got a couple of 0 cost attacks, but then generally all we're doing is sitting on our block cards, which are skills. We're going to keep getting this back for even more consistent 0 cost damage. So another really nice, useful card if you see it. Obviously pick this one up as well. Then we had just another 0 cost Know Thy Place. You'll notice a trend here. I'm picking up a lot of 0 cost cards because I want to be able to play Bombardment, and I want to be able to play a lot of the other cards I've got in my hand on that turn. It's quite essential. I don't want to be playing a Bombardment and have nothing else to do for that turn. That's quite key here. So I just picked up a few things that are going to help to improve our damage and also improve our survivability. For me, as a common card, this is going to make every turn you're going to hit harder, and you're going to take less damage for 0 cost. So this is a really interesting skill. Once you upgrade it, it stops becoming exhaustible, and that's key here. This is just going to be, every turn this is in your hand, your cards that you play are going to be that much more effective. So I would say this is worth picking up in a lot of builds as well. We then also did get lucky and managed to pick up an Ultimate Defend, which is just a no-brainer. If you do see this as an option, get rid of 2 of your defend cards, which are quite weak, and make a much better upgraded version. And we've talked about Gamma Blast already. So Falling Star is obviously one that you start with. This is a really useful card. It only costs 2 stars. So we've got a lot now of 0 cost cards that essentially lean into star power. And then we also picked up, because we were at this point focused on our defensive cards, Patter for me is a really solid card. It's a 1 cost. It upgrades from 11 to 13 and 2 Vigor to 3. I'm not really that interested in the Vigor. The Vigor is not that important here. That's just going to add a little bit of extra damage to the next attack. Working with 0 cost cards like Make It So, this is going to combo up reasonably well. But actually, we're just looking at the amount of block, which is solid for 13. Plus, we did stick a little extra charge on there, so you get 15 as well. So really solid, one cost for a really good defend. I think that's one's worth picking up. And finally, we did slot this in towards the end. It felt like our block game wasn't as strong as it could be, and I'm sure there's lots of other cards out there that would work with this. But for me, just having an extra little power, which mostly costs stars, bearing in mind we've got a lot of ways to generate stars in this build. Neutron Age is just 8 plating, so you're going to, over the course of the few turns that you're going to be playing, just helping to generate that little extra block to keep us in the game. So there is quite a few cards that I would recommend picking up for this build. But the main ones we're looking at here were Bombardment, because that's our consistent damage that's going to play out every turn. And then we're also looking at a couple of 0 cost cards. Gamma Blast being one of the key extra damages that we have. And then we had Falling Star, which obviously we start out with as a really good card as well. Then focusing on some really key strong defensive cards. We've already got the damage rolling. We're going to be consistent damage with Bombardment and our 0 costs. Then we're looking at some really solid defensive cards. So Patter would be my first pick. Cloak of Stars is a really solid pick here because you're getting so many stars. This is playable every turn, and I'll talk you through a couple of the extra cards in the selection that you could look for as well. Alright, so just a couple of extra cards that I would potentially think about throwing in with this build. Now, this isn't, I would say, one of the most clear-cut builds. So we did have the Bombardment in there as a free cost power, and then we kind of thought, how else do we build around this? Because that doesn't sort of work on its own. So we looked at building some star resources, and then we looked at utilising a lot of zero-cost attacks, and also using the star resources as a main way of applying weak and vulnerable, but also applying lots of block as well. So there's a couple of cards that I think would slot in really nicely with this build if we didn't have the cards that we had. So the main thing I think that has really made this work is the Sealed Throne, and that is a rare power. So we're going to look for something that would be an alternative to that. So that's going to generate, the whole point of this is it's going to generate lots of star. Now, we could go on to this one instead as an alternative. So Genesis is a bit harder to play out with at 2 cost, but it's going to generate you 3 every turn. Now, if you think about Sealed Throne as being every time you play a card, and we've got lots of zero cost cards running in our build that are going to help feed that to give us lots of star power. For Genesis, when it's upgraded, you're probably going to play, you're looking at the, I guess the parallel would be you've played 3 cards with Sealed Throne running. So it's not too different. It's a bit harder to set up. It's not going to generate quite as quickly, but it is going to generate your star pretty fast, and you should have enough to play most cards most turns. We would probably want another little generator on top of Genesis just to make sure we are hitting the stars that we need, but this would serve as an alternative and definitely one I could put in the deck. There is a couple of other cards that I would always look to pick up in a deck where we're looking at generating star power. So this is a really good all-round universal card, and I think would slot into any deck, but in particular when we're trying to play out a nice big chunky power at the start and we hopefully want to hit that on our first turn, we can make this innate. It gives us an extra card draw just in case we've not found it, and it will give us an extra energy and a star to make sure we are able to play that out. So Big Bang is a really good way to set up a sort of power space build, which is this essentially is, where we're relying on a couple of powers being run in to actually generate enough value and enough damage. So Big Bang, really good shout for me. We also have Comet, which is just an insane card. This is probably one of the strongest cards in the collection, I think, across the game. It costs 0 but 5 star. The reason why I say this is incredible is because stars are very easy to generate once you've got an engine, and the engines are quite easy to build. I've just talked you through a couple of them, but there are other ways to do it. So Comet is hitting incredibly hard at 44 damage, and it's also adding 3 weak and 3 vulnerable on top. There's a good chance that if you're generating enough stars, you're going to play this out on the first turn, and by the time you come back round, you've already hit a vulnerable, and you're going to get an extra 22 damage on top from the vulnerable as well. So this will then be hitting for 66 damage. The 3 weak means that essentially you've got weak on the boss or the enemy the entire time, which is just insane. So Comet plus, insane card. Add this to any build, it will absolutely rock your world. And then we also have a couple of blue cards which are really cool. So one in particular, we've got, well, let's say 2. If we're looking at a star based build, Royal Gamble can be really good. It does exhaust, it can be retained now. So you can hold on to this, and as soon as you hit 5 stars, you can then essentially almost double your amount of stars, which is going to really help you pop off. So this is a really good card to have in a stars based build where you're focusing on generating stars to play lots of cheap cards. We also needed to focus on defense as a main thing. So one of the main issues, I guess, we're playing out this Bombard card. That's going to get us lots of damage. We've also got Charge, which is going to get us plenty of damage, but how do we keep ourselves alive? So a couple more cards just to really help with that. Reflect is a solid all-rounder. It upgrades to 21 block for 1 and 3 stars. Don't forget, stars are a little bit not a concern in this build, but on top of that, blocked attack damage is reflected to your attacker this turn, which is pretty huge. So any boss, for example, that's doing a huge swing is going to basically chunk the round health out. This is going to be a whole of a build based around Reflect and playing this over again. We'll have a look at that one at a later date, but yeah, definitely worth considering for this one. Then we also have, for me, one of the stars of any star build would be Particle Wall. So this card, having 1 or even 2 of these in your deck with a star build when you've got an engine online and you've got lots of stars to play, is absolutely insane. This is effectively your blocking for that turn is sorted. So you're going to play this out for 2, you're going to get 12 block, which is insanely efficient, and it's just going to bounce straight back into your hand, and you're going to play it again and again and again. So if I've got 8 star ready to go, I can generate 48 block just straight off the bat with Particle Wall. This is like an insanely broken card, and I would recommend picking this up in any Regent build because it's going to help you survive a lot. And I think there's one more which is uncommon. We've already mentioned a couple of different ways of generating star, but this one, which is just, it's not the most useful card in the world unless you are struggling to find other ways of generating stars. It doesn't do anything particularly good on the turn you play it. It costs an energy, but then it is going to generate you 4 stars at the end of your turn. So if you think about this as almost like a power, so you're playing it almost like a power, and in most builds where you're leveraging stars, you're going to be focused on 0 cost or 1 cost cards that use star as the main resource. So hidden cache, if you're sort of implementing the right build, this should generate you plenty of stars across your turns, and I think it's probably worth picking up if you haven't found a more reliable source. So definitely one to consider, one I would give a little bit of a thought to. And finally, an extra damage card, which would have served as a nice alternative to the thing that we were doing with Gamma. Is it Gamma Blast? Yep, so Gamma Blast being one of our main damage sources once we've got the Bombard down. Lunar Blast as maybe a bit of an alternative to that. So this is a 4 damage or 5 damage for each skill you've already played. It's 0 cost, so it's nice and easy to play, and we're going to be playing lots of skills in this build as well. So using those stars, generate lots of block using our skills. So Lunar Blast is usually going to net you a decent amount of damage, so definitely one to think about as well. Alright guys, so there we have it for this one. So the Regent is a difficult class to get your head around. It's a little bit clunky, but with these new upgrades, I think this is going to be a really cool and fun class, and certainly a good character as well. In terms of building the Regent, we're going to have a look at a few more builds down the line, but the main thing from my point of view there is make sure you get yourself a star building engine so that you can use those incredibly powerful star cards, and that's going to really diminish the amount of energy that you need to spend every turn, and it's going to make sure that you have a much more effective build that's going on. So I'm looking forward to making some more of these for the Regent. Stay tuned for more, and don't forget to like and subscribe, support the channel so we can hit 100 subs. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Alright, thank you for watching guys, and have a good one.